Stop being a slave to your emotions. Stoicism. Every day emotions hit us like an unexpected storm, and before we even realize it, we can be swept away. One moment, it's anger that ruins an entire afternoon. The next, it's anxiety casting a shadow over every smile, making it impossible to truly enjoy the moment. Life throws a lot at us, and while we're told to control ourselves, no one really shows us how. When emotions rise, it feels like we're drowning in a turbulent sea. Small problems become overwhelming, and we can say things we regret or hold on to feelings that weigh us down. But is there a way to live with calm and resilience, no matter what emotions arise? The answer is yes. It's about realizing that we are not our emotions. They don't have to dictate our actions. Once you learn to choose your responses, rather than letting emotions control you, life becomes lighter and freer. 1. Master your emotions. Emotions are an undeniable part of our human experience. They arise naturally, part of the intricate design of our brain's response to the world around us. They aren't something to suppress or ignore, but signals, alerts designed to inform us. When you feel anger, fear, joy, or sadness, these emotions are communicating something important. They show us what matters, reveal areas of discomfort, or highlight things we care deeply about. But here's the catch. While emotions are natural, it's our reactions to them that truly define our lives. In the space between feeling an emotion and acting on it, we hold our greatest power. And this is where our real choice lies. Think about those moments when a rush of anger or anxiety starts to take hold of you, perhaps before an important meeting or a big decision. In that brief instant, a window opens. It's a tiny gap in time where you can choose how to respond. You could allow those emotions to take the wheel and let them control your behavior, or you could pause, breathe, and choose a more mindful response. That moment of pause, though brief, is where freedom resides. It's in that space that you reclaim control. The goal here isn't to suppress or deny your feelings, nor is it to be unfeeling like a stone. It's about becoming steady, able to face life's emotional storms without being swept away by them. Life can be overwhelming, no doubt. Emotions surge like waves, and it's easy to feel like you're at their mercy. But imagine the relief that comes with understanding that you don't have to react to every single thing that triggers you. You can experience frustration without it causing you to lash out. You can feel fear without it paralyzing you. You can meet disappointment without giving up hope. This sense of freedom, this power over your own emotional state, can truly change the way you live. It's not about being emotionless, but about being empowered enough to not let your feelings dictate how you act or how you perceive yourself. Living in this way doesn't mean life becomes easy or emotion-free. Far from it. You will still face anger, sadness, and fear. The difference, however, lies in how you handle these emotions. Instead of letting them control your actions, you become an observer. You learn to notice each emotion as it arises, recognizing it for what it is, a passing signal, not a permanent state. The ability to pause and reflect allows you to process your emotions without being swept away by them. This takes time and practice. It's a skill that deepens with each day, and over time, life begins to feel less like an emotional roller coaster and more like smooth sailing. The key to living this way is recognizing that your emotions are like waves. They rise, but they also fall. You don't have to be swept up in them. You can feel them without drowning. The more you practice this, the more your life transforms. The emotional highs and lows lose their power over you. You can feel stress but not let it drive your decisions. You can experience joy without clinging to it desperately. It's not about becoming numb to life's ups and downs, but about finding a deeper steadiness that allows you to navigate through them with clarity. You start to see emotions for what they truly are, passing states of mind that don't define you. As you learn to respond from a place of calm and wisdom, you free yourself from the reactive patterns that often rule us. Here's the beautiful part. You are not at the mercy of your emotions. With each choice to pause and reflect before reacting, you regain a little more of your freedom. This doesn't mean avoiding or ignoring your feelings. It means not letting them control your life. Every moment you choose a thoughtful response, you reclaim your sense of self. You start to build a life where your actions are guided by values, not impulses. In fact, that's exactly what happens when you learn to harness your emotions instead of being enslaved by them. You become stronger, not because you suppress your feelings, but because you learn to navigate them with intention. Fear becomes a lesson in courage. Anger becomes a path to understanding. Sadness becomes a reminder of what you hold most dear. Emotions, rather than being obstacles, become tools for growth and insight. And with every setback or challenge, instead of falling into despair, you see it as a stepping stone, an opportunity for learning and resilience. In your own life, perhaps a time when you were faced with frustration, anxiety, or a sense of helplessness. How did you respond? Did those emotions control you? Or did you step back and observe them? If you've ever found yourself caught in an emotional reaction, ask yourself, what would it look like to choose a more measured response next time? What if you could feel every emotion deeply but not let it rule your actions? This isn't just a theoretical exercise. It's a practical skill you can begin to cultivate today. Each time you choose calm over chaos, wisdom over impulse, you build a stronger foundation for your life. And the beauty of this journey is that it's never too late to start. You can begin right now. Every moment you spend understanding and responding to your emotions instead of reacting mindlessly is a moment of freedom. As you practice this, you'll realize that life becomes less about fighting your emotions and more about embracing them in a way that allows you to live fully, without being held back by fleeting feelings. Being able to face challenges with a steady heart. No matter how life changes around you, you remain grounded in who you are. Emotions still come, but they no longer define you. Instead of riding the emotional roller coaster, you become the calm observer who can handle whatever comes your way. This is the power of Stoicism. Not to escape emotions, but to transform your relationship with them so that they serve you, not the other way around. Are we willing to practice this shift? Are we ready to stop being slaves to our emotions and start living with intention? Every choice we make today, whether to react or to respond thoughtfully, shapes the future we're building. Start small, take one pause at a time, and over time you'll discover that the freedom you've been searching for is already within you. All it takes is the courage to choose how you respond. In this way, we don't just become better at managing emotions. We become masters of our own lives, resilient, calm, and at peace with who we are. This is the true freedom that Stoicism offers, not the absence of feelings, but the wisdom to respond to them in ways that help us grow and thrive. 2. Finding freedom through Stoicism. In today's fast-paced world, where everything seems to demand an immediate response, emotions often take center stage, sweeping us away in moments of anger, sadness, or fear. Have you ever found yourself struggling to control a wave of emotion, trying desperately to push it down or cling to fleeting moments of happiness? It's an exhausting cycle, one that never seems to work the way we hope. You try to stop your anger from bubbling over, to hold on to joy as it fades, or to bury sadness deep within. But no matter how hard you try, emotions slip through your grasp. The truth is, these feelings are not something we can control like we control our actions. Emotions arise naturally in response to what is happening both within us and in the world around us. It's not about suppressing them, but about learning to respond to them in a way that doesn't leave us feeling out of control or overwhelmed. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This is the essence of what it means to not be a slave to your emotions. We live in a world where reactions are often immediate and emotional. Society pressures us to react in the moment, to feel everything deeply, and to let those feelings dictate our actions. But what if we paused instead? What if, instead of trying to fight every feeling or chase after happiness, we simply observed our emotions, understood their message, and chose how to respond? This idea might sound easier said than done, but it is one of the most powerful tools we have for creating a life of peace and resilience. When we stop trying to control emotions, we stop adding layers of resistance that only increase our suffering. Think of emotions like the weather. We can't force the sun to shine when it's raining, and we can't force ourselves to feel calm when we're angry or anxious. Trying to control our emotions is like trying to stop a river from flowing with a bucket. It's futile, and the more we resist, the more pressure we create, only for the emotion to eventually burst out, often in ways that harm us or those around us. The key, then, is not to control our emotions, but to change our relationship with them. When we start to view emotions as signals rather than commands, we free ourselves from the tyranny of impulsive reactions. For example, let's say you feel anger rising when someone cuts you off in traffic. If you immediately react by shouting or tailgating, you allow that anger to control your actions. But if, instead, you pause, take a deep breath, and observe the anger without judgment, you create space for a different response. That pause doesn't eliminate the anger, but it allows you to choose a more measured response, perhaps a smile, a moment of understanding, or simply letting it go. You are no longer a slave to that emotion. You are the master of how you choose to act. But it's not just about pausing in the heat of the moment. It's about building a practice of observing and responding to our emotions thoughtfully over time. This takes practice, and it's a skill that grows with repetition. One of the simplest ways to begin is through mindful breathing. When you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, whether by stress, fear, or even excitement, take a moment to breathe deeply. This isn't just a trick to calm you down. It's a way to shift your focus from the emotional surge to the act of breathing. It allows you to center yourself and create that space between feeling and reaction, where true freedom lies. The ability to observe our emotions without being consumed by them is not a form of repression or denial. It's an act of wisdom. We are not trying to eliminate emotions or pretend they don't exist. We are simply learning to manage them with grace, recognizing that they are transient, like waves in the ocean. Emotions come and go, but we don't have to be swept away by every wave. Instead, we can learn to ride them, staying steady and grounded. This is what it means to live with emotional intelligence. It's about understanding that we can experience our emotions without letting them control us. In fact, each emotion carries with it valuable information. For example, fear can be a signal that something is important to us, or that we're stepping into new territory. Anger might indicate that we feel unjustly treated, or that something is not right in our world. Sadness often reminds us of what we value, what we've lost, or what we long for. When we stop fighting our emotions, we can begin to understand their messages and use them to guide us toward a more fulfilling life. Instead of running from them, we can welcome them as teachers, helping us grow into stronger, more resilient people. Think about a time in your life when you felt completely overwhelmed by your emotions. How did it feel? Did you feel like you were just at the mercy of your feelings, powerless to change them? Now, consider how different it would have been if in that moment you had paused, observed, and then chosen a response that aligned with your values. This shift in perspective can change everything, not just in moments of emotional turmoil, but in how you approach life in general. When you learn to control your reactions, you start to gain control over your life. It's important to remember that this is a journey. The Stoics understood that mastering your emotions doesn't happen overnight. It's something that requires consistent effort, practice, and patience. But the rewards of emotional mastery are worth the effort. By learning to observe our emotions, we reclaim our power. We stop being tossed around by every passing feeling and start responding with intention. It's not about living a life free from pain or hardship. but about responding to those challenges with wisdom, peace, and strength. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the essence of emotional mastery. It's about realizing that while we can't control the emotions that arise, we can control how we respond to them. And that is where true freedom lies. The more you practice this skill, the more your life will shift. Emotions may come and go, but your ability to respond with wisdom, calm, and purpose will become a steady anchor in the storms of life. And that is the ultimate freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of emotions. 3. The Stoic path to inner peace and resilience. In life, emotions come and go like waves on the ocean, rising and falling with the rhythm of existence. They don't define who we are, but rather serve as part of the human experience. The problem often lies in our attempt to control them, to either push away the negative ones or chase the positive ones. This constant battle against our own feelings creates unnecessary turmoil and keeps us from living fully. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." The key to emotional mastery lies in this choice: how we respond to the waves that come our way, not in trying to stop them. By letting go of the need to control our emotions, we open ourselves up to a profound freedom. We don't resign ourselves to suffering or passively accept the storm. Instead, we embrace an active form of acceptance, recognizing emotions for what they are and choosing not to let them control us. It's a courageous act, standing face to face with our feelings and acknowledging them without needing to change or escape them. This shift in perspective doesn't mean we stop feeling or that emotions stop coming. Rather, it allows us to experience each emotion without attaching our happiness or peace to it. Think about a time when you felt intense anger or frustration. How easy it is to let that dictate your words and actions in the heat of the moment. Now, imagine approaching those feelings with a calm understanding that while anger may come, it doesn't define you. You don't need to lash out or hold on to it. In fact, by choosing not to act impulsively, you create a stable inner life that remains grounded regardless of what emotions may arise. This inner stability is the foundation of resilience, a cornerstone of Stoic practice. When we stop trying to control emotions, we become better equipped to face life's challenges. Instead of being swept away by the emotional currents, we learn to stand firm in the middle of the storm. As Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest philosophers, put it, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Our peace doesn't depend on the fleeting presence or absence of emotions, but on how we choose to perceive them. Emotional resilience doesn't happen overnight, but it is a skill that can be cultivated with practice. It begins with a simple, yet powerful act: noticing. In the heat of the moment, when an emotion like anger or anxiety begins to rise, pause and acknowledge it without immediately reacting. This isn't about suppressing the emotion, but rather recognizing it for what it is, a passing visitor that doesn't need to be acted upon. Think about the last time you were frustrated. Did you let it consume you? Or did you take a moment to breathe and reassess? In these moments, we choose to be the observer, not the puppet of our emotions. This practice builds inner strength and creates a calm center that remains undisturbed by emotional storms. Over time, this act of mindful observation helps us separate ourselves from our emotions, allowing us to experience them without becoming them. It's about learning to ride the waves rather than trying to stop them from coming. This process of letting go of control and learning to observe emotions requires patience and self-awareness. It's about detaching from the need to control what we can't change and learning to respond to life with wisdom instead of impulse. When we stop viewing emotions as enemies to be conquered, we realize that they are part of our humanity, rich with meaning and insight. They offer valuable lessons about who we are, what we value, and how we interact with the world. By shifting our perspective, We free ourselves from the tyranny of emotional ups and downs and open ourselves to a life of authenticity, purpose, and peace. As Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Often our suffering doesn't come from the emotion itself, but from our resistance to it, our belief that we shouldn't feel what we feel." In truth, emotions are natural and they don't have to control us unless we allow them to. The real liberation comes when we accept emotions as they arise without attaching our identity to them. We can feel anger without letting it turn us into an angry person. We can experience sadness without allowing it to consume us. It's in this space of acceptance that true freedom resides. We learn to experience emotions fully without being bound by them. Think of it like standing by the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. The waves may come with force, but they don't move you. You stay grounded, observing without reacting. This is the path to emotional mastery. It's about learning to detach from the emotional storms within and stepping back to see them for what they truly are, temporary and fleeting. In doing so, we build the resilience to face life's highs and lows with grace and steadiness. This shift towards emotional mastery is not easy, but it is deeply rewarding. Each time we choose to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively, we build a new habit, a new way of living. It's not about suppressing our emotions, but learning to understand them, to see them as messengers, not masters. The more we practice this, the stronger and more resilient we become. Over time, we cultivate a steady inner peace that allows us to navigate life's challenges with wisdom and grace. This peace is not a passive state. It's an active, deliberate choice to live in harmony with our emotions, not as their slave, but as their master. When we understand this, we reclaim our power and our freedom. We can face life's storms with a steady heart, knowing that emotions may come, but they don't have to define us. This is the true victory, the quiet, steady victory of a life lived with wisdom, resilience, and an unwavering calm. As the Stoics teach, we are not at the mercy of life's circumstances. We are at the helm, guiding our responses with thoughtful, deliberate action. This is the art of emotional mastery. You've just taken a huge step toward emotional freedom. If you're ready to continue mastering your emotions, leave a comment below saying, "I'm taking control." Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's so much more wisdom ahead to help you live a resilient, fulfilled life. 4. The power of detachment in Stoicism. In our daily lives, emotions often seem to come rushing at us, overwhelming our thoughts and actions. In moments of intense feeling, be it anger, sadness, or joy, it's easy to feel like we are at the mercy of these emotions, like they define us. But what if I told you that these emotions don't have to control you? What if you could learn to observe them without being swept away by them? Stoicism, with its timeless wisdom, teaches us how to practice detachment, a way of observing emotions without identifying with them. It's about stepping back and recognizing that emotions are simply reactions, temporary states, not realities. They are not facts about the world around us, but stories we tell ourselves, shaped by our fears, desires, and experiences. And just like a storyteller weaves a narrative, emotions spin stories in our minds, stories that can either help us grow or keep us locked in turmoil. When we become aware of this, we can start to see emotions for what they truly are, passing waves, not permanent fixtures. And with that understanding, we gain the power to respond to life with clarity and calmness, no matter what emotions arise. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." In that moment, you can choose to react to the traffic with anger, letting it cloud your mind and day. Or you can choose to detach from that frustration, acknowledging it as a passing emotion, like a cloud in the sky, without letting it control your next move. This ability to detach doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means recognizing that emotions, though powerful, are not who we are. They are fleeting visitors, not permanent aspects of our identity. This practice of detachment requires you to become the observer of your emotions. When anger, sadness, or anxiety arises, instead of allowing these emotions to dictate your actions, take a moment to simply notice them. Feel the tightness in your chest, the rapid heartbeat, the tension in your muscles. By focusing on these physical sensations, you shift your attention away from the emotional storm and bring yourself back to the present moment. This simple act of noticing, the first step in detachment, helps you regain control, not by fighting the emotion but by allowing it to exist without it dictating your next move. This detachment also creates space for wisdom. You no longer have to react impulsively, but instead can pause, reflect, and choose how to respond thoughtfully. Think about it. How often do you regret reacting too quickly, only to realize later that your response was driven more by emotion than reason? By practicing detachment, you can break this cycle, allowing your responses to be guided by calmness rather than emotional impulses. Mindfulness is one of the most powerful tools in this journey of detachment. When emotions arise, it's easy to label them as bad or undesirable, especially when they're uncomfortable, like fear or frustration. But what if, instead of judging those emotions, you simply observed them? When you do this, you remove much of their power over you. You allow them to come and go without resistance. This doesn't mean that emotions become less intense. It simply means they don't have the same grip on you. By practicing this non-judgmental awareness, you start to notice that emotions are just temporary experiences, not facts or fixed parts of who you are. Just because you feel sadness doesn't mean you're a sad person. Just because you feel anger doesn't mean you're an angry person. You are simply experiencing an emotion, and like all emotions, it will eventually pass. This realization can be incredibly freeing because it allows you to maintain your peace, regardless of what emotions arise. But there's another layer to this practice of detachment, challenging the stories that our emotions often tell us. For example, when fear arises, it might tell us that we are in danger. But is that fear truly based on reality, or is it simply a reaction to uncertainty? When sadness comes, it might tell us that things are hopeless. But is that sadness a reflection of the truth, or is it colored by our expectations or past experiences? By questioning these emotional stories, we begin to see them for what they really are, temporary reactions, not permanent truths. This allows us to detach from the emotions themselves rather than getting caught up in the narrative they weave. This is a key part of emotional mastery, understanding that emotions don't have to define us, and that we have the power to challenge the assumptions they bring. The more you practice detachment, the more you will begin to realize that you are not your emotions. Emotions come and go, but they do not determine your worth or who you are as a person. You are not an angry person just because you feel angry. You are not a sad person just because you feel sadness. This understanding is empowering. It frees you from the cycle of reacting to emotions as though they were permanent fixtures in your life. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This is the essence of detachment, recognizing that we have the power to choose how we relate to our emotions, even when we can't control the emotions themselves. As you continue practicing detachment, you will find that it brings more mental clarity. When you stop reacting to every fleeting emotion, you preserve your mental energy. This energy can be redirected to things that truly matter, things that align with your values, your goals, and your purpose in life. Detachment, far from being a form of cold indifference, is a practice that allows you to conserve your emotional and mental resources. It frees you from the constant cycle of emotional turmoil and allows you to approach life's challenges with a steady, focused mind. And as your mental energy becomes more directed, you will find that you can make better decisions, act more wisely, and respond with more grace to the inevitable ups and downs of life. Another important benefit of detachment is that it fosters compassion, both for yourself and others. When you observe your emotions without judgment, you develop a deeper understanding of the human experience. You realize that everyone faces emotional struggles, and that these struggles don't make us weak, they make us human. This understanding fosters empathy, both for your own challenges and for those of others. When you observe emotions without reacting to them, you gain the space to respond with kindness, patience, and understanding, rather than judgment. This creates stronger, more harmonious relationships, built on mutual respect and shared human experience. In moments of conflict, detachment can be especially valuable. Imagine someone criticizes you or says something hurtful. The natural reaction is often to feel defensive or upset. But with detachment, you can take a step back, observe your emotional response, and choose a more measured, thoughtful reply. You don't have to escalate the conflict with a defensive reaction. Instead, you can respond with calmness, perhaps even empathy. This ability to detach from emotional triggers allows you to navigate conflicts with wisdom, preventing minor issues from becoming major ones. Detachment is not about suppressing or denying emotions, but about observing them with awareness and understanding. It's about recognizing that emotions, while powerful, are not permanent. They are fleeting visitors, not aspects of your identity. By practicing detachment, you gain the ability to respond to life with greater resilience, clarity, and compassion. You become the calm in the storm, the observer of your emotions, rather than their slave. And in doing so, you reclaim your inner power, creating a peaceful, purposeful life, no longer at the mercy of fleeting feelings. 5. Detachment. In the journey of life, we are often pulled into emotional turmoil, feeling as though we are at the mercy of our emotions, whether it's anger, sadness, joy, or fear. But what if I told you that there's a way to step back from all of this, to not be overwhelmed by these feelings, but rather observe them from a place of calm detachment? The idea of detachment is not about suppressing your emotions or becoming indifferent, but rather about seeing emotions for what they truly are, passing states of mind, not permanent fixtures of who you are. It's about creating a space between the feeling and your response to it, allowing you to make wiser, more deliberate choices instead of reacting impulsively. As the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, we are disturbed not by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens to us. This concept is the essence of detachment. It's not the event itself that stirs your emotions, but your interpretation of that event. When you cultivate detachment, you free yourself from being a slave to your emotions. Emotions, while natural and inevitable, don't have to control your life. They come and go, just like waves in the ocean. Sometimes we might feel swept away by a powerful wave of anger or sadness, but with detachment, you learn to ride the waves rather than drown in them. This shift in perspective brings a sense of inner peace, a peace that is not dependent on the circumstances of your life, but on your ability to remain grounded no matter what happens. When you no longer chase happiness or resist sadness, when you stop trying to control your emotions, you open the door to a deeper sense of freedom. Life still brings its challenges, its highs and lows, but your inner peace remains steady, anchored in the realization that you are not your emotions. Emotions are visitors. They come and go, but you don't have to identify with them or allow them to dictate your actions. Think about how often emotions cloud our judgment. When we are angry or frustrated, our decisions are often hasty and driven by impulse, not wisdom. But with detachment, we find clarity. We begin to make decisions based on our values, our principles, and our long-term goals, not based on the fleeting, temporary surge of emotion. When your emotions no longer have the power to dictate your reactions, you can approach life with a calm mind and make choices that align with the life you want to build. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the power of detachment, the ability to choose your response rather than being at the mercy of emotional waves. Detachment also allows us to experience happiness in a deeper, more sustainable way. Think about it. How often do we cling to happy moments, fearing that they will slip away? We want to hold on to joy, to prevent it from fading. But this constant fear of loss only robs us of fully enjoying the moment. When you practice detachment, happiness becomes a natural part of the ebb and flow of life, not something you have to grasp desperately. You can experience joy fully, knowing that it will pass, but that's okay because it will return again. And in between, you find contentment not in the absence of happiness, but in the acceptance of all emotions as they come and go. The more you practice detachment, the more you realize that true happiness comes not from the pursuit of a constant state of joy, but from a deeper sense of peace and acceptance of whatever life brings your way. This idea of detachment, of observing rather than being entangled in your emotions, also helps in reframing situations. Every day we face challenges, some expected, others completely out of the blue. In these moments, it's easy to react emotionally, interpreting situations through a lens of fear, frustration, or disappointment. But if we take a step back and reframe our perspective, we can change how we respond to challenges. Reframing is about recognizing that our initial reactions are not always the truth. They are just interpretations based on our past experiences, fears, and assumptions. In addition to reframing, detachment also teaches us to challenge the stories we tell ourselves about our emotions. Fear, for example, often convinces us that we are in immediate danger, but is that always the case? Or is it simply a response to uncertainty? Anger tells us that something is wrong, but is that always true? Or is it a reaction to unmet expectations? By learning to question our emotional reactions and separate them from objective reality, we break free from the grip of negative thinking. You no longer have to accept emotions at face value. You have the power to examine them critically and decide whether they are serving you or hindering you. This is where true emotional freedom lies, not in avoiding emotions, but in controlling how you relate to them. One powerful tool for detaching from emotional turmoil is mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to observe our emotions without judgment, to watch them as if we are spectators in a theater rather than actors in the play. When you practice mindfulness, you can notice your emotions rising and passing away without being swept away by them. Imagine feeling angry. Rather than immediately reacting, you take a moment to observe the sensation of anger in your body, the tightness in your chest, the heat in your face, the rapidity of your breath. By focusing on the physical sensations rather than the emotional story, you gain a sense of control. You remind yourself that anger, like all emotions, is temporary and that you don't need to act on it immediately. Over time, this practice of observing without judgment helps you cultivate a calm, steady presence, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Detachment also frees up mental and emotional energy. When you are constantly reacting to every emotion, life can feel overwhelming. Your energy is drained and you may find yourself constantly battling emotional highs and lows. But with detachment, you conserve your energy. You don't have to react to every feeling that arises, and in doing so, you make room for more important things: your goals, your relationships, and your growth. With less emotional turbulence, you have more clarity and focus, allowing you to approach challenges with resilience and wisdom. This mental clarity also extends to your relationships. When you detach from emotional reactivity, you become less likely to overreact in conflicts, allowing for more compassionate and thoughtful interactions. You are able to listen, empathize, and respond with calmness, rather than defensiveness or anger. This creates deeper, more harmonious relationships where understanding and patience replace judgment and frustration. In moments of conflict, detachment allows you to respond with wisdom instead of reacting defensively. When someone criticizes you or says something hurtful, your first instinct might be to feel attacked or to lash out. But with detachment, you take a step back and observe the situation. You realize that the other person's words are not necessarily about you. They are often a reflection of their own struggles or emotions. Instead of reacting impulsively, you can choose to respond with empathy and understanding, creating space for calmness to prevail. This approach diffuses tension, reduces stress, and prevents minor issues from escalating into major conflicts. Through detachment, you transform the way you interact with the world, cultivating relationships and experiences that are rooted in peace and wisdom, not in the fluctuating tides of emotion. Ultimately, detachment is not about avoiding emotions. It's about transforming your relationship with them. By cultivating the ability to observe emotions without becoming entangled in them, you can navigate life's challenges with resilience and wisdom. You gain the freedom to live authentically, to make decisions that are aligned with your true self, and to experience life fully without being controlled by emotional turbulence. Detachment gives you the power to shape your responses, to reclaim your peace, and to embrace the world with a steady heart and a clear mind. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you practice detachment, you take control of your thoughts, and by extension, your life. The journey is not easy, but it is the path to true freedom, the freedom to live with clarity, purpose, and peace. 6. The power of Stoic reframing. In life, particularly for men navigating the challenges of their 40s to 70s, it's all too easy to become a slave to our emotions. Whether it's frustration, anger, sadness, or fear, we often find ourselves at the mercy of how we feel in the moment. But Stoic philosophy offers a powerful antidote to this emotional turmoil, teaching us the art of detachment, reframing, and cultivating inner peace. One of the first steps in this journey is realizing that emotions, while natural, are not our identity. The renowned Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. This insight is the cornerstone of reframing, seeing situations differently, not through the lens of frustration or defeat, but through the lens of understanding and control. It starts by acknowledging that, while we cannot control everything, we have the power to control our reaction. This brings us to the importance of self-compassion, which is a tool often overlooked but essential for reframing emotional experiences. When things go wrong, it's easy to fall into harsh self-criticism, feeling inadequate or blaming ourselves. However, practicing self-compassion shifts our mindset from self-judgment to understanding. We all face struggles. It's part of the human condition. When we view challenges as shared experiences rather than personal failures, we soften our response, build resilience, and recover with greater strength. Instead of punishing ourselves, we accept that imperfection is part of the journey, and with this acceptance, we make space for growth. Another critical aspect of reframing is patience. In our fast-paced world, it's tempting to seek immediate solutions to every problem. We're conditioned to think that an answer must be found right away, but Stoicism teaches us the value of stepping back and giving time for clarity. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "Time is a river of passing events. It is a fire of life." In many cases, distance and time offer the best opportunities for reflection, allowing us to see the situation from a broader perspective. We often feel rushed to fix everything, but true peace comes when we stop, breathe, and let time work its magic. This sense of patience encourages us to understand that not all answers need to be immediate. Some of life's greatest insights unfold slowly, like a flower blooming, and the wisdom gained through patience can lead to far better outcomes than hastily made decisions. With this in mind, one of the most practical techniques of reframing is to look for the silver lining in every situation. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect, but about actively seeking the positive aspects within challenges. Even in tough times, there's always something to learn, be it a lesson in resilience, a new perspective on an old problem, or a reminder of our own strength. The practice of finding something good in the midst of adversity shifts our focus from negativity to gratitude, and this simple shift can transform our experience of hardship into something empowering. Perfectionism often compounds our emotional struggles, and it's another area where reframing can have a profound impact. Many of us hold ourselves and others to unrealistic standards, setting ourselves up for disappointment when things inevitably fall short. Perfectionism leads to stress, frustration, and a constant feeling of inadequacy, but the Stoic view of accepting life as it is, imperfect and unpredictable, fosters peace. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca put it, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." By embracing imperfection and accepting life's unpredictable nature, we free ourselves from the unrealistic expectation that things should always go according to plan. This mindset helps us release the pressure of constant striving for unattainable perfection and instead encourages us to focus on what is truly important: progress, learning, and growth. Letting go of perfectionism allows us to accept situations for what they are, without the burden of unrealistic expectations, and this shift brings with it a sense of peace and freedom. In the process of reframing, gratitude plays a pivotal role. Even in the darkest moments, there is always something to be grateful for. Gratitude doesn't ignore the difficulties we face. It simply helps us to see them in balance with the good that remains. Every setback brings with it a lesson. Every hardship offers an opportunity to develop resilience. By practicing gratitude, we cultivate an awareness of what we have, what we've learned, and what we can still be thankful for despite our struggles. This shift in perspective allows us to see that no situation is entirely negative. Even in adversity, there is growth. Acknowledging these positive aspects not only counterbalances negativity but strengthens our ability to weather the storms of life with a sense of groundedness and peace. It helps us stay rooted in the present moment, acknowledging both the difficulty and the gratitude simultaneously, rather than becoming overwhelmed by the former. Another powerful reframing tool is focusing on what we can control, rather than dwelling on what we cannot. This is particularly vital in today's world, where external factors, economic uncertainty, health challenges, or the actions of others, can easily feel overwhelming. The Stoic practice teaches that we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control our response to it. We can choose our actions, our thoughts, and how we approach the situation. By focusing on our reactions and taking responsibility for how we respond to life's challenges, we regain a sense of agency. This gives us the strength to act with clarity and intention rather than reacting impulsively or with frustration. As Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Reframing situations by focusing on what we can influence empowers us to navigate life's challenges with confidence, making decisions based on our values rather than being swept away by the uncontrollable currents of external events. An essential part of reframing is finding meaning in adversity. It's often through our most difficult moments that we experience the most growth. The challenges we face shape us in ways we can't always predict, and by finding meaning in them, we transform them into opportunities for wisdom and strength. Even when the path ahead seems unclear, the Stoic mindset encourages us to see hardship as a tool for growth rather than as an obstacle. The philosopher Epictetus famously said, "Difficulties are things that show a man what he is." The key to reframing is recognizing that adversity, rather than breaking us, builds us. It helps us uncover our deepest strengths and provides us with the resilience needed to continue moving forward. By looking for the lessons in every struggle, we turn obstacles into stepping stones toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Reframing also requires a solution-oriented approach. When we focus solely on the problems at hand, we often feel helpless and overwhelmed. But by shifting our focus toward solutions, we reclaim a sense of control. This approach keeps us from becoming stuck in negative thinking and encourages us to take proactive steps. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When faced with obstacles, reframing challenges as opportunities to act rather than be paralyzed by them is essential. By focusing on solutions, we stay forward-focused, ensuring that we don't get bogged down by what we can't change, but instead channel our energy into constructive steps. Finally, reframing encourages an optimistic outlook. It's not about denying difficulties or pretending that life is always smooth sailing. Instead, it's about maintaining hope and believing in the possibility of positive outcomes, even in the face of adversity. Optimism doesn't mean we ignore the struggles. It means we trust that setbacks are temporary, and that, with patience and perseverance, things can improve. This mindset keeps us resilient, encouraging us to continue moving forward, even when times are tough. Stoic philosophy teaches that our life is what our thoughts make it, and by reframing negative situations with optimism, we build a peaceful and resilient mind that can withstand the trials of life without losing hope. Incorporating the practice of reframing into our lives leads to profound inner peace. It transforms how we experience both joy and hardship, allowing us to live fully and with greater wisdom. Reframing doesn't eliminate life's challenges, but it changes how we relate to them. It fosters a sense of resilience, strength, and clarity that empowers us to live intentionally, with greater control over our emotional responses. As we deepen our ability to reframe situations, we cultivate an inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances, but rather on how we choose to perceive and respond to them. Through this journey of reframing, we find not just emotional freedom, but a sense of purpose guided by the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. 7. The key to emotional freedom. Developing self-awareness is a transformative process, one that allows us to understand ourselves in a deeper way and helps us step out of the reactive patterns that often govern our emotions. Imagine you're adjusting the lens of a camera, bringing clarity where once there was only assumption. When we begin this journey, we must start by observing our emotions as they arise, paying careful attention to the triggers that cause them. These triggers are often subtle, perhaps a comment from a colleague, a change in someone's tone, or a glance that leaves us feeling uneasy. At first, these reactions may seem random or inexplicable, but with time, they reveal powerful insights into our deepest sensitivities. By observing these triggers, we start to notice patterns in our emotional responses. Perhaps a question from a friend evokes irritation, or a minor setback leads to an overwhelming sense of self-doubt. These patterns are like breadcrumbs leading us back to the root causes of our emotional reactions. Are these responses connected to past experiences? Are they stemming from our insecurities or unresolved issues? The answers we uncover can offer profound clarity, illuminating our inner world in ways that allow us to transform our emotional responses. Self-awareness also means understanding the beliefs that shape our perceptions and reactions. These beliefs, though often silent and unspoken, are the foundation of how we experience the world. For instance, if we believe that we must always succeed, any small failure can provoke anxiety or frustration. This belief, while well-intentioned, sets us up for stress and disappointment, as it's an unattainable standard. By recognizing these underlying beliefs, we give ourselves the opportunity to question them. Do they serve us, or are they creating unnecessary pressure? When we begin to examine and challenge these beliefs, we free ourselves from the constraints of unrealistic expectations, empowering ourselves to make choices that align with our values and well-being. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In this way, self-awareness becomes a practice of dismantling the automatic, often harmful beliefs that can lead us toward unhappiness, and instead, we cultivate a mindset grounded in understanding and acceptance. A crucial part of self-awareness is recognizing patterns in our behavior that have become ingrained over time. Sometimes these patterns are so automatic that we don't even realize they are influencing our actions. For example, a tendency to avoid conflict might cause us to overlook important issues in our relationships or workplaces. Similarly, a habit of overthinking might make even the simplest decisions feel overwhelming. When we become aware of these patterns, we gain the power to change them. Instead of being trapped in cycles of behavior that no longer serve us, we can consciously choose to respond in new, healthier ways. It's like breaking free from the autopilot mode of our lives and choosing to steer the ship ourselves, making decisions that reflect our true intentions rather than habitual fears. The journey toward self-awareness is also a journey toward vulnerability. It's a path that asks us to look closely at the aspects of ourselves that we may prefer to avoid, those uncomfortable truths that can be hard to face. Perhaps we discover that we tend to judge others more harshly than we realized, or that we've been hiding insecurities even from ourselves. These realizations can be uncomfortable, but they are essential for growth. As the Stoics teach us, true strength comes not from denying our vulnerabilities, but from embracing them. By accepting our flaws without judgment, we move from self-criticism to self-understanding, opening the door to deeper authenticity and a more genuine connection with ourselves and others. This self-acceptance doesn't mean resigning ourselves to inaction, but rather recognizing that we are human and fallible, and that these imperfections are part of the journey, not barriers to it. Another key aspect of self-awareness is noticing the way we communicate with ourselves. Often, our inner dialogue can be harsh and critical, especially when we make mistakes or fall short of our expectations. This negative self-talk can erode our self-esteem and make us less resilient in the face of challenges. When we become aware of this pattern, we can choose to replace it with kinder, more constructive language. Instead of berating ourselves for a mistake, we can ask ourselves what we can learn from the experience. By shifting the tone of our inner conversation, we build a foundation of self-compassion and encourage ourselves to grow, rather than feeling stuck in shame or frustration. This shift doesn't come overnight, but with practice, we begin to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a close friend in times of difficulty. Self-awareness also invites us to reflect on how we seek validation from others or from external achievements. It's easy to fall into the trap of tying our self-worth to the opinions of others, constantly seeking approval or recognition. But when we rely too heavily on external validation, we place our sense of security in something unstable, what others think or what we achieve. This dependency can lead to feelings of insecurity when praise is absent, or when we fail to meet someone else's expectations. By recognizing this tendency, we take back control over our sense of self-worth. We learn to find validation within ourselves rather than in the approval of others, which brings a steadier, more resilient confidence. Practicing self-awareness also enhances our ability to live in the present moment. By paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, and reactions in real time, we can ground ourselves in the here and now, rather than being lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. This present-focused mindset helps us make decisions based on current realities, not on the distorted lenses of past experiences or future fears. As we learn to focus on what we can control in the present moment, we gain clarity and peace, and we let go of the need to control what is beyond our reach. This brings a profound sense of peace, as we stop wasting energy on what we can't change and start focusing on what is within our power to influence. Ultimately, self-awareness teaches us to take responsibility for our actions and their impact on those around us. When we observe how our reactions influence our relationships, our work, and our well-being, we can choose to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This understanding encourages us to act with intention, leading to more positive outcomes and a greater sense of peace. As we continue this practice, we strengthen our ability to make decisions that reflect our values and contribute to our well-being. The practice of self-awareness is a powerful tool for transforming our emotional lives. It allows us to see the patterns and beliefs that drive our reactions, helps us break free from automatic behaviors, and encourages us to approach ourselves and others with greater compassion and understanding. This journey is not always easy, and it may reveal uncomfortable truths about ourselves, but it is essential for growth. By becoming more aware of our inner world, we can respond to life with greater clarity, confidence, and resilience. The more we practice self-awareness, the more we unlock our potential for living a peaceful, purposeful life, guided by wisdom and grounded in self-acceptance. The key, as Epictetus wisely noted, is in how we choose to respond. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. If this video resonated with you, it's time to commit to change. Share your thoughts in the comments with, "I'm owning my emotions," and join the journey to a calmer, more intentional life. Be sure to subscribe for more practical Stoic strategies to transform your mindset and elevate your daily life. 8. The power of self-awareness and responsibility. Taking responsibility for our actions is a fundamental step toward maturity, and it's a key part of the journey toward emotional freedom. When we stop blaming others or external circumstances, we free ourselves from the chains of reactivity. Instead of letting life's challenges dictate our responses, we begin to respond with wisdom and thoughtful consideration. This is not only crucial for personal growth, but it strengthens our relationships too. When we communicate openly and take responsibility for our feelings, it clears the air, enhances understanding, and minimizes misunderstandings. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." And listening, especially to ourselves, is a profound part of self-awareness. One key element of self-awareness is recognizing how the environments around us influence our emotional and mental states. From the people we interact with to the media we consume, our surroundings have a profound impact on our thoughts and feelings. Have you ever noticed how a conversation with a particular friend or a specific social media post can affect your mood? This is a perfect example of how external influences shape us. By observing these patterns, we can gain better control over our emotional states, intentionally choosing where to invest our time and energy. Imagine a toxic workplace or a relationship that constantly drains you emotionally. By becoming more aware of how it affects your well-being, you can make informed decisions about setting boundaries that protect your mental health. This doesn't mean running away from every challenge, but creating healthy limits so that you can thrive in an environment that supports your growth. Self-awareness also involves recognizing our emotional boundaries. How often do you find yourself absorbing other people's emotions, whether it's their frustration, sadness, or anger? It's easy to let others' moods dictate your own sense of peace, but true strength lies in separating your feelings from those around you. When you maintain emotional boundaries, you protect your inner calm, regardless of what's happening externally. This is a skill that strengthens your resilience. Think of the times when you've been able to support a friend or family member through a tough time, yet you didn't become overwhelmed by their emotions. How did it feel to help them, while still maintaining your own sense of stability? This emotional boundary, rooted in self-awareness, helps us offer support without losing ourselves in the process. It allows us to remain grounded in our own values, so we don't get swept away by the emotional tides of others. As Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Furthermore, self-awareness teaches us the importance of rest and reflection. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to push ourselves too hard, ignoring signs of fatigue or burnout. Have you ever found yourself running on empty, only to realize too late that you're physically and mentally exhausted? Ignoring the need for rest only leads to burnout. But when we become attuned to our own needs, we start to recognize when it's time to step back, take a break, and recharge. Just like an athlete knows when to rest after a rigorous workout, we too must recognize the signs of overexertion. This is not about weakness or laziness. It's about honoring our bodies and minds. Self-care isn't something to feel guilty about. It's an essential part of sustainable growth. When we nurture ourselves, we become better equipped to handle life's challenges with energy and focus. It's like the Stoic principle of eudaimonia, a life of flourishing that can only be achieved when we care for our whole being, not just the aspects we want to improve. Another transformative aspect of self-awareness is recognizing what truly matters to us in life. When we understand our values, goals, and desires, we align our actions with our deepest intentions, creating a life that reflects our authentic selves. This alignment is the foundation for living with purpose, a sense of clarity and fulfillment that can't be shaken by external pressures or societal expectations. Self-awareness also nurtures gratitude. By becoming more attuned to the positive aspects of our experiences, we learn to notice the small joys, the moments of kindness, the lessons learned, the beauty in everyday life. When we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, we cultivate a mindset of abundance which fosters emotional well-being. Gratitude doesn't deny the existence of hardships, but it helps us view them through a balanced lens. It allows us to stay grounded, even in difficult times, reminding ourselves that no situation is entirely without value. As Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, said, "A grateful mind is a great mind which eventually attracts to itself great things." Gratitude enhances our resilience, helping us navigate life's inevitable challenges with a more balanced and hopeful outlook. Through self-awareness, we also learn to embrace change. Change is inevitable, yet it can be one of the most difficult things for many of us to accept. Why do you think that is? Why do we resist the very thing that is part of life's natural rhythm? Perhaps it's fear of the unknown, or the discomfort of breaking old habits. But self-awareness teaches us to see change not as a threat, but as an opportunity. When we observe our reactions to change, we can learn to approach it with curiosity rather than fear. This openness to change builds flexibility, a quality that is essential for resilience. Life will always evolve, and those who resist will often find themselves stuck, while those who embrace change move forward, growing stronger and more adaptable. By developing self-awareness, we can learn to navigate life's ups and downs with greater ease, knowing that change is simply another step in our journey. As you continue to develop self-awareness, you begin to notice that it's not about controlling every thought or emotion. It's about understanding them, responding with wisdom rather than impulsivity. This ability to observe your internal world without judgment gives you the freedom to choose your responses, even in the most challenging situations. With self-awareness, you no longer react mindlessly to triggers, but instead you respond with clarity and calm. You begin to master your emotions instead of being a slave to them. This inner strength doesn't come from perfection, but from understanding your strengths, weaknesses, and patterns. It's about accepting yourself as you are, and still choosing to grow. This journey of self-awareness is what ultimately leads to lasting peace and resilience. A life lived with intention, purpose, and deep inner clarity. As we wrap up this video, remember that the power to stop being a slave to your emotions lies within you. By practicing the principles of Stoicism, embracing self-awareness, taking responsibility for your reactions, and maintaining emotional boundaries, you can start living a life grounded in wisdom, peace, and resilience. These are not just philosophical ideas, but practical tools you can apply every day to navigate challenges with clarity and calm. So, I encourage you to take one small step today, whether it's pausing to observe your emotions or setting a boundary to protect your peace, and start using Stoic principles to create the life you deserve. I'd love to hear from you. How do you plan to apply these ideas in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Stoic in Your Life for more insights on living with purpose and inner strength. Keep striving for growth, and remember, the power to change starts with you.